Although Christopher Columbus is popularly credited with discovering the New World, the Americas were named after Amerigo Vespucci, a Florentine merchant who traveled to Brazil in 1501 and found that the New World was not India. Long before the Europeans thought about kingdoms, empires, or colonization, the Americas had begun their long and rich history. For centuries, they were home to great empires like the Aztecs, Olmecs, and hundreds of Native American tribes. However, the separation between North and South America was only part of the Americas once the Europeans arrived. They separated the land amongst themselves, paying little attention to traditional divisions or the lack thereof. Colonization shifted the course of the Americas' history forever. Although the two continents share similar stories of struggle and longing for independence, they have developed into very different modern countries due to the main colonizing influences from across the Atlantic Ocean. What were the Americas like before colonization? It is believed the Americas were home to over 1,000 different tribes and civilizations, but many ethologists believe the first people migrated to the Americas around 20,000 years ago, coming from Asia. Experts today believe there was a land bridge between modern Russia and Alaska during the last ice age, on which people crossed over. Historians don't know why this exodus occurred. It could have been caused by climate change or following migrating herds for food. The people settled across the Americas, but some of the most famous civilizations emerged in Mesoamerica. One of those famous civilizations was the Maya. Historians believe their civilization began around 3000 BCE and stretched from the Yucatan Peninsula to El Salvador. Maya culture spanned thousands of years, and during that time, the people settled into city-states, each one ruled by a separate royal family believed to be descended from the gods. Religion was a critical aspect of Maya society and even impacted the games the Maya played. Of course, the Maya did more than build city-states and develop a religion. They were one of 4 civilizations to develop a written language independently. The other 3 were China, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. The Maya also developed their own number system involving dots and dashes. But their most famous development is probably the Maya calendar. It has 3 different methods for measuring the days, and the long count calendar is the version many believe predicted the end of the world in 2012. However, experts maintain that the long count calendar simply started over in 2012, and they appear to have been correct. Despite all of their achievements, the Maya civilization was gone by 1000 CE. Historians don't fully know what happened. Some suspect intertribal warfare or soil exhaustion. The Maya people are still amongst us today, living in small areas like the Yucatan Peninsula and Guatemala. After the Maya civilizations disappeared, another influential group strode onto the pages of history: the Aztecs. Historians date the start of Aztec society to 1250 CE. They began as a small tribe and actually received help from Culhuacan until they sacrificed the Culhuacan leader's daughter to deify her in 1323. The Aztecs were cast out, but legend states that they prayed to Huitzilopochtli, their son and war god, who directed them to build Tenochtitlan. This city would become a marvel of American engineering and later become a central hub of government and trade. The Aztecs developed a complex society with social classes and a bustling economy. They even built aqueducts to bring fresh water into the area for drinking and farming, and a separate sewage system that created fertilizer for the farms. They ate mostly vegetables and sea animals like fish and shellfish, but their trade system was based on bartering, not money. However, the Aztecs are most well known today for their human sacrifices. They believed the sun might not return every morning. The setting sun meant Huitzilopochtli had fought against the darkness and lost, signaling the demise of their civilization was not far away. To help the sun be born again the following day, they needed to sacrifice blood. It was usually just a little bloodletting, but around 18 times a year, they would perform a human sacrifice. Although the Aztecs were not the only American civilization to practice human sacrifice, it is what they are most famous for today, alongside how the Spanish conquistadors destroyed their society. Of course, the Aztecs were not the only civilization in the Americas before colonization. There were also the Incas, who lived in modern-day Peru and built Machu Picchu. Many tribes were scattered across modern-day South America. The land, warfare, and their religion were essential parts of their lives. although each tribe addressed them differently. But there were also tribes roaming modern-day North America, and their environments shaped their cultures dramatically, which stretched from the Arctic ice to the southwestern deserts. Historians believe people settled around 4,000 years ago in the Arctic regions. One of the most famous tribes was the Inuits, who lived in igloos during the winter to keep warm. These people mostly ate meat and hunted animals like seals, caribous, and polar bears. Another famous group is the Athabascans, who were mostly nomadic and lived as fur trappers. They traded with other tribes for beans and pottery around the Great Lakes regions, but the Athabascans were not serious farmers. The tribes along the East Coast were more numerous, and several tribes in the Northeast even formed a group called the Iroquois Confederacy. The eastern tribes hunted and farmed, growing squash, corn, and beans together. They also grew other crops depending on the climate. Trade networks were a critical part of Native American cultures. Tribes in the Southeast even built cities that served as trade centers. Tribes on the eastern coast regularly traded with groups living in the Great Plains. The eastern tribes brought food and furs. The Great Plains tribes brought silver, pearls, and copper. The Great Plains tribes did not rely on farming because the grassland was not fertile enough to farm. Instead, they relied on buffalo and other animals, so they were nomadic, following the herds throughout the seasons. Although the tribes in the Southwest faced an even harsher climate than the Great Plains, they built permanent homes in the cliffs, eventually leading to the famous Pueblo cities made from adobe. These tribes created an irrigation system for their beans and corn, and even constructed roads for trade with the tribes near the Rio Grande and trade centers throughout the Southwest. The tribes on the West Coast had some similarities to those on the Eastern Coast. They hunted, farmed, and had complex trade systems. They used acorns as their currency early in their history. Overall, the tribes of North America were diverse and complex. They each had their own culture. Sometimes those differences led to peace and cooperation, and sometimes they clashed and the people went to war. The people were developing just like other people around the globe. But all that changed in 1492 when the Europeans arrived from across the Atlantic Ocean and viewed the Americas as something to conquer instead of seeing the people as new and equal allies. How did colonization change the Americas? Initially, the Europeans started across the Atlantic Ocean to find a more accessible and cheaper way to travel to India and the Far East. Before that, trade had relied upon the Silk Road, which traveled overland and was constantly in danger of robbers, or upon sailing around Africa, which took a long time. Most Europeans were not even aware that the Americas existed. The Vikings were the first Europeans to discover the Americas when Leif Erikson found the eastern coast of Canada. However, this discovery was not popularly known across Europe, so when Christopher Columbus landed in the Bahamas in October 1492, he thought he had found the East Indies. People didn't realize the Americas were something different until 1501, when the Europeans realized that this was the New World. Ferdinand Magellan and his crew proved it by sailing from England around South America to the Philippines and then back to England, circumnavigating the globe in 1522. Once the European countries realized they had not found the East Indies, they began dividing the land amongst themselves, often killing or enslaving the native inhabitants. They were focused on harnessing the natural resources in the Americas for their own economic gain. They built plantations to grow crops like sugar, cotton, and tobacco, and organized expeditions to search for precious materials like gold. The Portuguese and the Spanish focused on colonizing modern-day Central and South America. The Spanish went as far north as Florida, but did not go much farther. One of their biggest successes was the conquest of Mexico, which they called New Spain. This acquisition included conquering the Aztec people and tearing down Tenochtitlan to build Mexico City. The Portuguese focused on Brazil, where they created sugar plantations and cut down trees for Brazil wood, which could make red dye. They enslaved the people who lived there to do this work for them, and they treated them harshly. Although Spain and Portugal tried to claim the entire New World for themselves, other European countries soon followed, determined to get a piece of the land. France claimed territory in modern-day Canada, while Britain claimed land in the modern-day United States. All four countries fought with each other for land, partly because the divisions between them were not distinct or firm boundaries. France claimed land in the middle of North America, extending down the Mississippi River to the port of New Orleans. They mostly used their land for fur trading, and established fewer colonies than the British in North America. France also extended into the Caribbean, taking several islands and establishing plantations. Britain began expanding west in North America while Spain continued conquests in South America. Throughout all this, the native people struggled through a time of chaos. The Europeans brought new weapons like guns, which the indigenous people could not fight against. They imposed their governmental systems, culture, and religion on the people in the land, forcing many to give up their beliefs in favor of Christianity. The Europeans also brought their diseases, although this was probably not intentional. The people in the Americas were diverse and robust, but they had never encountered European diseases before. With no natural immunity, they died by the thousands from diseases like smallpox and measles. In a short time, the people lost their cultures and their freedom. The Americas were now divided. North America was mostly under French and British rule, and Mesoamerica and South America were mostly under Spanish and Portuguese control. These cultural differences continue to define the two continents today. However, colonization gave the Americas more than just new illnesses and oppression. It also instilled in the people a deep longing for freedom. Rebellion was part of colonies in the Americas almost from the beginning, but the American Revolution was the first successful one. The American colonists, many of whom were originally British, declared independence in 1776 after Britain raised multiple taxes and attempted to halt any resistance. The colonists were ill-equipped and poorly trained initially, but they could still hold their own against one of the best armies in the world because they knew the land well. With France's help, the colonists finally beat the British at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. American independence shocked the world. Many oppressed people took hope from it and soon staged their own revolutions. Mexico won its independence in 1821 from the Spanish. Other South American countries soon followed, but it would be a long, challenging, and bloody fight before the people living in the Americas would gain their freedom. South America is still dealing with power struggles and has seen several revolutions. North America has seen more stability in its governments and cultures, but they are still working out how to respect the native cultures still inhabiting the land. The division between North and South America was shaped by colonization, and the world is still struggling with the effects of it today as people work through what it means to be free. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. I hope you found this video to be captivating. To learn more about North and South America, check out our book, The Americas, a captivating guide to the history of the continents of North and South America, starting from the Olmecs through the Maya and Aztecs to European colonization and independence movements. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.